Hi, can you hear me? Where is this thing? Yes, you hear me? Okay, so I can work like this. Yes, great. Great. Okay. Okay, great. Yes, I need this script. Okay. Hi everybody, I'm going to start, wait a couple minutes more just to the courtesy minutes, and I'll jump right into it. Hopefully this one will be a little shorter than the last one. Okay, let's start. While I do the introduction, we can wait for a few more people. Anyway, welcome. Thanks for being around. This course is about coreBOS web service API, what it is and how to use it, and it's actually the first part of a three-part course that we are organizing. The idea is to teach people how to use the React admin portal infrastructure that we have that works with coreBOS. To do that, since it's all web service based, we realize that you really kind of need to know what and how the web service API works to be able to kind of customize and work with the React admin portal. So we decided to do this in three parts. The first part is the web service API, which is good and valid knowledge for the React admin portal next two steps classes that we will give. But also it's good in general. I mean, any kind of external application that we need to integrate with coreBOS, somehow or other is probably going to be using this web service API anyway. So it's good knowledge to have as a general knowledge base of how and what coreBOS is. So just a small addition, that the next two courses will be React admin setup and configuration, basically how to get React admin as it is, as the base version that you can download comes, how to get that working and kind of get configuration in the map, in the coreBOS, and what it needs. And then the third part will be about developing things, adding new features and functionalities to that React admin. So today there's base knowledge that we need, coreBOS web service API. So I'm going to start with a small introduction of what it is. The idea is that coreBOS is, as the name implies, the core business operating system. It's supposed to be that business tool that you have in your company and that lets you grow upon your knowledge, upon your business knowledge. Okay, so all of those business workflows and functionality, all those things that happen in your business are supposed to be captured in that coreBOS. Since that information is actually the main source of business, is the main source of functionality in your company, the natural thing is to be able to access that information from anywhere. I mean, if you have a website, if you have a mobile app, if you have some vendor or customer or employee portal where you have your employees accessing information or giving you some information about themselves, that information naturally has to be in your coreBOS. So that coreBOS has to kind of give you a way to export and manipulate that information from external applications, and that's all what the web service API is about. So that means that we have to give, we as coreBOS developers and project managers, we have to give to the users of that coreBOS a way to access all of the information that is contained in that coreBOS. So that happens through the HTTP protocol, just like any other REST or SOAP or anything based on web technology in the last 40 or 50 years. We access that web service API through the web service PHP endpoint. That means that if I have here my coreBOS and I am accessing on localhost coreBOS test and I access the application on index.php, if I access this on web service PHP, then okay, I get this nice error here, but that's because this is not the right way to access that information. Hold on a sec. Okay, so in fact I'm gonna try to get rid of this message, make it a little less noisy, which we should be able to do by putting a 0 here and an off here. A 0 here will work also, and this message will be exactly the same. Kidding me. Okay, that's because hopefully we have here okay. Okay, we'll play with it this way. Okay, unknown operation. Okay. This is the actual response of the coreBOS endpoint. Okay, it's saying that when I call this web service PHP without any parameters, without any authentication, without anything at all, I'm going to get a false error here and an unknown operation. Let's continue with that a little further, and we'll see more of that kind of stuff there. So all of the responses that we get from there is a JSON, as you can actually see here. It is a JSON format, and we have two global variables that are very interesting and affecting this part of the code. One is the web service enabled global variable, and if we activate that global variable, we can totally turn off the web service functionality. That's useful as a security measure for those installs that you know you're not using that. By default, it's on. This is not affecting at all. What am I doing wrong here? Go host coreBOS web service. Oh, no, wait. Sorry. I have to turn it off, actually. Okay. So that global variable will turn off completely all of the web service functionality that you have. That is, again, useful for those installs where you know that nobody should be entering on this endpoint, that you are not using the web service API for anything. So you kind of turn it off, and you should be able to make the application a little bit more secure. The other variable is when we use this through JavaScript applications. Hold on a sec. Okay, so the other one is important when you are accessing via JavaScript. When you're in a JavaScript application and you're trying to use the web service API, the cross-origin site, it will enter in effect, which means that basically if you're on one domain and you try to access your coreBOS on another domain, the browser is going to block you. The browser is not going to let you, but before not letting you in, it actually asks the coreBOS endpoint if it is authorized to log in or not. So this variable will permit you to activate that. Okay, just keep that in mind, because that's one of the typical problems that most people have when they try to access the web service API. Nowadays, almost everything is JavaScript. You have a React app or you have something, and you are working on some domain or some mobile app. You try to access, and coreBOS is not going to let you in because of this check. Okay, so you have to activate this global variable and put your domains there. So keep that in mind. The error message that you get is really clear when you try to access the web service API from JavaScript. That way you will get a message in the console saying that you are not authorized because of the course restriction, and you just go and activate that. So in short, we have one endpoint, one entry point to coreBOS, which is the normal entry point which we have to access the application on the index PHP, and we have another entry point which is on the web service PHP script. They both work similar, HTTP, just give it the URL and you try to access. Both of them will ask you for authorization, which will be the next step that we're going to see now. And both of them will give you access to the information that you have in that coreBOS. So let's have a look at how, okay, this the next step is how the calls look. Basically everything is JSON, sorry. So we send in JSON objects and we get back JSON objects, which kind of look like this. Usually all of them, each independent method that we have uses a different set of information going in, different set of parameters, and we get a different set of information out. Usually we have this success. These are the success. When we get the information out, it will tell us that the information went well, the call went correctly, and it will give us the information on this result variable. And if it went wrong, it will give us this false on the error. Okay, so I got that wrong actually. We were talking about the response. The entry points are actually very different. They're also JSON based, but different depending on the methods. So we're always going to get one of these two responses back. Not always, but almost always. Most of the time. Okay. The hardest part about the web service API for me is the abstraction level that you have to make. Okay, it's not a really difficult API to understand. It doesn't have a lot of, I mean, even though it has a lot of methods, most of them are meta information and minor things that you don't really use much. The ones you do use are kind of simple and kind of logical. The biggest problem that we have is the learning curve, because not only on the web service but also in the application. I mean, as coreBOS, as a business application, we have mostly entities. You have accounts, which are companies and people inside those companies, and you have invoices, and you have products, and you have potentials, and you have a lot of things that a business uses. So, and you have the relation between all of these things that you have to understand and know how to balance and how to actually use, because every company can adapt them a little to their needs, so they can add relations and add other fields that another coreBOS doesn't even have, or they can add completely whole new modules that no other coreBOS in the world has. So we have, as an application, coreBOS itself, and as a web service API, we have to make that logical abstraction where you can work with anything. You can work with any module, not only the ones that coreBOS comes with when you install it for the first time, but any module that anybody installs because they need it or they create for whatever reason. You have to be able to work with any type of relation or any type of number of fields that any different coreBOS may have added because they needed them, obviously. So that level of abstraction will obligate us to be basically sending the module we want to work on all the time. Every time we have a web service call, and somehow in one way or another we have to send in that module, because we don't really know if that coreBOS has that module, it doesn't have it, or what kind of structure we actually are working with in the back end. So that level of abstraction obligates us to do some tricks or some enhancements that you have to understand. You kind of have to get a feel of what they are and what they are. Okay. Most of that information is saved in the IDs. The IDs that we send around contain that module, and I'll see that now. And one of the most important parts is that since we don't know what we are going to find in each coreBOS, we need to have a set of API calls that will give us the meta information that we need. We need a way to connect to any coreBOS and say, okay, what modules do you have? And what can I see? And what can I show? And what can I create? Okay, that kind of information has to be sent around. And that's the first thing you have to do when you connect with web service to, with your your external application to coreBOS. The first thing you have to do is connect with that coreBOS, ask it what it has. Okay, check, see what modules do I have, and what modules can the user who's connecting work with. Okay, all of that meta information is super important. It's also kind of heavy, kind of complex in the sense of it has a lot of meta information, which means that you don't want to be retrieving that meta information every time your client clicks around. You want to connect when they log in, get that meta information, save it somewhere, save it in local storage if you're in JavaScript, or save it on some local database or whatever you want to do, and use it from your local storage every time you need it. Okay, you can refresh it from time to time. You should refresh it from time to time, but you don't want to be accessing that meta information all of the time, every time, because it's there's a lot of information, as we'll see. Most of the system settings are applied. That means that the whole permission system, for example, in coreBOS, whereas you can say this role has access to only these modules, and on these modules only these fields, will be totally respected if I access via the web service API. So if I log into coreBOS and I can only see 5 modules, and all the other, I don't know, X, 10, 15 modules that are there, I do not have access to them with that user. When I access with that same user on the web service API, I'm going to see only those 5 modules I have right to see. Okay, and the only fields that are on those 5 modules that I have right to see. So most of the application configurations are totally respected through the web service API, which takes us back to the meta information. Even 2 users accessing the same coreBOS can see completely different types of meta information, because depending on their role, they will have a different set of modules and a different set of fields. So it is totally mandatory and important to get that meta information right when you log in with the user that you're accessing. Okay. Last comment, usually you will get information in the format of the database, and you have to send it in the format of the user. Okay, there are some tricks there and some changes, but mostly that's the rule. You get information in database format and you send it in as the user. That has a reason, and coreBOS does the same, but anyway, just keep that in mind. Okay, how do we access this API? Okay, it's just HTTP, so we can access it with anything that supports HTTP. We have a web service development tool, which I will show you now. That is probably one of the best ways to learn how to use the web service API, because there are examples and there are a bunch of code things in there, and useful little tools also to play with. We will see that now, but it's just a REST SOAP API, so you can actually access it with Postman, RESTbird, Thunder Client. We will see some of these now, just to see different ways of accessing, but in the end it's just about accessing the HTTP endpoint. You can do that in the browser also. I will show you how to do that when we get to the libraries also. But again, any tool, JMeter and other stress tools also can help and work correctly. Okay, so the first step, just like with coreBOS, the first thing we have to do is log in. We have to tell your web service API who you are. Okay, that login process is a two-step process. You first have to ask for a challenge. This challenge actually gives you a string, a token. You concatenate that token with an access key that you have. You MD5 that result, and you send in the login request. Okay, it's a two-step process. It's for security. This is a kind of a standard way of doing these things. And you should get back this JSON array where it says that you have been able to log in, and this number here, which is the important number. This string here is the session name, and that one is the ID that you will use for all of the other calls that you have to do in this coreBOS. That authenticates you as the user and as a valid login. Let's have a look at that. Let's try to do that here. I'm going to put PHP -a, and we don't have too much time between the challenge and the login, so we have to do that kind of fast. That MD5 has to be a little quick. So I'm going to prepare things here so that I can kind of get that fast. Okay, this is the wrong button. This is the MD5. Here on the first part, I have to put the token from the challenge, and on the second part, I have to move my access key. I'm going to log in as the admin user. I'm already logged in here. And here on the user profile, we have this field, this access key here. This is the one that we have to concatenate. This is the key that we have to use to get in. Okay, it's not your password. It's not the user password. It's this special key that's on the user profile. So I put that here, and here I have to put the challenge. So let's do that challenge. Let's do that challenge using Thunder Client, just for fun. Probably have it here. Yep. Okay. This is what a get challenge looks like. Basically, you send in two parameters. Notice here that I'm sending in to the localhost coreBOS test web service PHP. Okay, this is exactly the endpoint that I was showing you before, and I'm sending in two parameters here. Two values. The get challenge operation, that's what I want to do, and this get challenge requires one parameter, which is the username, in this case admin. So if I send this, yeah, good, web service is not active, correct, totally correct, I agree. So let's delete this one and try again. Okay, so it actually worked. As you can see, I get this response here, this structure that I was saying before, where we get the success true, the result, and the parameters or the properties of the call. In this case, I have this token here, and I have the time span. This is how long that token is actually valid. Okay, so I have to get this token, concatenate that token with this access key, which I got from my profile, and get this MD5. This value is the key that I have to give to the login. Okay, so I'm going to do that again, just in case we get a different number. I don't think so. Got the same one, it's still valid. Let's do it again anyway, just in case, so we get a little bit more time. Okay, yeah, it was exactly the same. Okay, and then we do the login, the second step. Again, it's very similar. As you can see here, we have this operation equals login, and then we have the username. Oops, sorry. And then we have the username again, and finally the access key, which is the value that I got from the MD5 of this. It's a little, if I send now, okay, now I have this success true again, and I have this format that we were explaining before. This session name is the key that I need from now on to be able to get into all of the other API endpoints that we have. Okay, so it's a little, I don't know, complicated, not complicated, complex. It's not really hard, but it's an extra step. It's not just a user password and let me in. We are playing a little bit hide and seek. We're trying not to send the access key around. Actually, notice that with this procedure, with this two-step procedure, the access key never leaves my computer. So the only thing that leaves my computer is this MD5 number, which is changing constantly because the token part is changing constantly. So it is really much more secure than sending around your information just because. But it gives, as usual, security gives us a little bit more work, and we have to play with that a little bit. So once you get over it, once you get your head around it, it's not really that hard. It's kind of just the way it works. Okay. Anyway, once we have this number, we can proceed with all of the rest of the calls in coreBOS. The first one that we're going to call, the first one I want to talk about, now we're actually entering into the web service API itself. We have a query language. Okay, since we have this abstraction layer, this coreBOS with a lot of information that we don't even know what kind of fields and what kind of modules we have created a query language very similar to SQL, but not SQL, where you can ask that coreBOS for information. Okay, it abstracts us from the database totally. Okay, it gives us a high-level way of accessing that information, and it makes it kind of easy to access anything that we need. Okay, or at least it tries. Let's have a look at what a query would look like, and I'm going to do that on the web service development tool. Okay, this other tool, okay, I just showed you how we could access with Thunder Client. This is the web service development tool. This is probably the best place that you can learn coreBOS web services. Okay, you can test, you can do a lot of things here, and we'll probably spend most of the rest of the session here. This is itself a PHP external application that uses coreBOS web service API to help you, teach you how to work with the coreBOS web service API. So the whole application itself is just a web service application. Okay, it's an external application that can connect to any coreBOS in the world, and you can do almost anything that you can do with the coreBOS web service API. So the first thing you have to do here is log in, tell me what coreBOS you want to connect to, and you give me the access key. In this case, you give me the user and the access key, and this tool will do the login for me. It will do that two-step login that we just did manually. It will do it for me. So here I don't have to really worry about the challenge or anything, or the MD5. It will do that. This application already knows and will do that for me. It just gives me the username and the access key, and I'm able to log in and work with the web service app. This tool gives us basically 4 tabs, which is this query tool, list type tool, which we will see next, and 2 code testing, and 1 in PHP and 1 in JavaScript. We will get to those ones. But actually, I wanted to talk about the query language. Gio. Okay, so the query language. The query language is basically like it says up there. Select first name from leads and they have a disk sort and a limit. I'm going to limit this to, I don't know, 10 records and launch. Okay, so as you can see here, I get this table where I get the first name of the leads and their internal ID. So this is the query language. As you can see, it looks very similar to a SQL language. The difference here is that I'm using this leads. I'm not putting a database table name at all. I'm actually putting just the entity that I have in coreBOS. So if I go to coreBOS and I go to the leads module, I should be able to see this Gladys, Willow, Ernie, and Katie, which are exactly the ones that I have here. Okay, these four here. So I'm getting access to the same information. I'm just getting it in a JSON format. Actually, this is returning a JSON object, which I am formatting into this table that you see here. Okay, but this web service development tool is formatting that JSON response into this. If it were a JavaScript application or a mobile React native application, or I don't know, any external application in any language that you want to use, you will get, as a result of this select, a JSON object with 10 first name of the leads, and you can format them and do that anything you want to do with that information. Okay, so as you can see, the query language is I mean, just what you would expect it to be from a SQL-like language. I mean, just add here whatever you need. I mean, if we want to have the last name, then we just add the last name, and we get 2 columns. And if we want to change the module to contacts, which I think has the same exact 2 names, that works also. Obviously, if we go to accounts, we're going to have to change the name because accounts doesn't have those other 2. Accounts or accounts? Accounts, email 1. Okay, and this takes us to the next step. Okay, I'm working on memory here. I've seen these tables so many times that I more or less know what the fields names are, but this is where that meta information comes into handy, what I was talking about before. How do I know that accounts has an account name or an email name or an email field? I mean, in this case it's saying it doesn't, so I can kind of guess, but how do I know that it's actually email 1 without recurring to going to the database or actually looking for, I don't know, something? I mean, this coreBOS web service API has to give us some way of us to get this information without having to go to the database or manually looking for something. I mean, we have to have a programmatical way of getting what fields I actually have access to. Because in any case, depending on the user that I'm logging in, I will have this field or not completely. Okay, so the slide that I'm saying here basically says that we have 4 different variants of web service query language. That happens because because coreBOS has been around for a long time. We started with one set of functionality in the query language, and we soon found out that it wasn't enough, that we needed more. So we enhanced it, and for a certain set of reasons we weren't able to enhance it directly based on this one. So we ended up having 2 different languages or variants of the language. Then we actually were able to do whatever we wanted because we actually forked. This was all pre-coreBOS time. We actually forked, so we created a 3rd variant of the language that was much more powerful, and it's actually the one that you want to use mostly. But we kind of respected the ones that were already there because we like backward compatibility and that stuff. And then we created even more powerful query language based on the workflow engine. The workflow engine in coreBOS has become one of the most important parts of coreBOS. It's used almost everywhere, not just for workflows, actually everywhere. And it's powerful enough to create queries and database queries, very, very complex queries. So we can use that language also in the workflow, in the web service API. It's not an easy language to work with, so it's basically machine generated. It's something you generate using the workflow user interface, but it's much more, not much more, but more powerful than the other three. You don't really have to know much about this because basically they just work. This you don't have to know, like here. Let's go back and let's do a join. I think the next tab, and we kind of finish off this one. The next tab talks about some considerations, some things you have to talk about here, like the fact that it's not SQL. We're not talking about database tables here. I mean, I don't know where this email one is in the database, or for example, if I ask for shipping address, I don't know if this will work. Shipping address? No, I don't remember what that one is. Ship bill address. Let's try. Bill address. No, I need to get the. Okay. Anyway, the idea is that some of this information, some of these fields, actually live on different database tables. Actually, we can do that. Let's do that. Just to make a point. So if we come here to this database and I look for that table here, let's look for it. Here I have vTiger account. Okay, this table actually has that account name and that email one field. Then I have this account billing address. Okay, if I look at the structure of this one, I will see that I have a bill city here. So if I ask the web service API to give me that billing city, it gives it to me. And I, as a web service API consumer, as the programmer accessing and using the coreBOS service, I don't care. I don't care at all where this build city is. I don't even have to know. Okay, coreBOS is protecting me, is leaving me that abstraction layer outside of that. It can be saved anywhere I want in the database. I don't even have to add a join on that table, which is actually happening. If you look here, the web service development tool gives you the real SQL that coreBOS is executing in the background. And it obviously does a left join on that account, vTiger account billing address, because it has to go to that table to get that field. So the web service API query language, I see how it disappeared. It gives me that higher level where I don't have to worry about the database tables at all. Okay. It also takes care of the joins for me because coreBOS knows the relations that are in the database. It knows exactly how accounts and contacts are related, how an invoice is related to a product, or how a potential and a quote is related. So I don't have to worry about doing joins nor understanding the database structure. If I want to get the first name and the account name from contacts, let's see what this one does. Account name, first name from, okay. Still wrong parent, account name doesn't exist. Okay, perfect. This account name doesn't exist, which is exactly what it's saying there, because it doesn't exist on the contacts. But in reality, each contact has a UE type 10, a relation field pointing to the account that that contact belongs to. coreBOS knows that. coreBOS knows that that contact is actually related to one account. So I have to find a way. I have to give, from as the coreBOS web service developer API, programmer, I have to give the user of the API a way to get to that account without having to do a join, without having, or actually having to do a join, but trying to make it as easy as possible. And coreBOS decided to solve that like this. You give me the name of the fields you want on your module, and you give me the name of the fields that you want on the other module. And coreBOS knows that that contact, each of these contacts, is related with one account, and it will go to that account and give me the account name. So this query actually works, and it gives me the first name, which lives on the contact, and the account name, which lives on the account. Okay, and I don't have to worry about the join. Obviously, the join is happening in the background. as you can see here. I mean, coreBOS has to do that, but coreBOS knows how to do that. It knows the relations, it knows how the modules are related, so I don't have to worry the user of the web service API with those details. You want the accounts field, then just ask for it. And the same happens with any other types of relations and things that we have around. We can add here as a closing point on the queries, because the query language has a lot of little details and things that we could talk about. It has a where, obviously we can do conditions. So I could probably do something like account name, like what? Like, I don't know, contains a C, for example. And that gives me all of the accounts, or the first 10 contacts whose account has a C in the name somehow. Okay, so here we can put all these kind of conditions, very SQL-like. Again, I mean, that's what it's all about. Again, you don't have to worry about, you know, the accounts or account name, whatever you want to ask, you can just do that. If I put here first name instead of account name, all of a sudden I'm changing that to the first 10 accounts, the first 10 contacts who have a C in their name. Okay, and there are two things that I want to add here, because they are kind of things that you usually fall into traps. So let's put the account name right here. Go back to the account model. Account name, and put accounts here. And let's get rid of the condition. Yeah, let's get rid of the condition just because. Okay, what is this going to do? Okay, I mean, I sadly can't get feedback from you on this direct thing, but so I'll have to answer myself. But the question is, what is coreBOS understanding in this case? I mean, I told you that if I don't put a prefix, this module name as a prefix of the field, it's getting the fields from the module itself. So this account name has to be the field on the account. But what is this field? I mean, is this field account name? I mean, is it the same one? Obviously not, because you can see here that they are different. So what account name am I accessing here? If I go to Chemex, we see here that I have a field, which is member of. The accounts have a recursive relation inside themselves. So one account belongs to one master or parent account. That's to do kind of like groupings and holdings. So you have a holding that has a bunch of accounts inside, so that all of the lower level accounts are actually joined or pointing to the master parent account. So what coreBOS Web Service Development Tool is telling me here is using that relation and going up to the parent. So this is the account name on the account itself, and this one coreBOS recognizes that you're asking it for a join, for a relation that's going upwards, even though it's inside the same module. Okay, so you have to be careful, because actually you kind of can play with a lot of little relations and things there. Okay, let's go to another one that usually most people fall into, which is kind of really true. Okay, I don't remember the names, so we have to go to the meta information first. Yeah, okay, let's go to the meta information and then come back to this one. 100 record limit. coreBOS query language by default returns 100 records when you do the query. If you want more, you have to add that limit with more records. Then you have to page. You have to page. You get 0 to 100, and then 100 to 100 to 200, and 200 to 300, etc. Query generator ID field processing. This is the one I was trying to explain now, but we have to get to the meta information first, and so we will do that one first. And this little trick is nice. If you are looking for all of the records that do not have a value in a related field, so if I want to get all of the accounts going back to the one that we had before. If I want to get all of the accounts that do not have a parent, I can use that trick here, where accounts, no, that would probably be account ID because it's the same field on the same module. I don't know about that one. Equals 11x. What does that do? Account ID. No results found. Where ID equals empty records with ID 0. Okay. Accounts ID. No. Okay. Declare account ID equals 0. Okay, I'll have a look at this one. But this trick works. In fact, it's available here somewhere. Okay. Yeah, I know what and if you need to, I don't remember exactly the syntax, but if you need to actually find all of the records that do have an empty UA type 10, we can do that. coreBOS web service language can do that. Okay. We look for it. It's on the wiki. Okay. Before we can go on with the query language and show you one of the other pitfalls that you usually fall into, we have to go to the meta information. Okay, as you can see already here, I have a lot of knowledge of the coreBOS database, and I really know the structure, and I know more or less how things are working there. I'm still struggling. I'm still struggling to get the right field names and trying to get the right way of putting things together. So that meta information is extremely important. Okay, we have basically really two endpoints that are the ones that are necessary. Okay, we have a lot of more endpoints that can be called and that give back information about the coreBOS structure, but the real important ones are these two: list types and describe. List types will give you the list of modules that the currently connected user has access to, and describe will give you the details of each of those modules. So let's have a look at what that looks like. I'm going to come over here to the test code PHP. Here I'm going to load some code examples that we have here. You have a whole bunch of code examples here, which is why I was saying that this tool is really nice to be able to teach you things. And here we have this list types. This list types goes and does a call to coreBOS with the session name, the operation, which is list types, and that's it. Okay, basically it doesn't do anything else. And that gives us back, if I execute this code, okay, nice. Okay, let's try over here. Cling. No, let's try exactly over here. Let's try this one. I mean, this one is just a get, which means that I should be able to come here, add these parameters here. It's just a get. Okay, I have to get the session ID. The session ID we had here, because I made the call here. We can do this call here also. And the operation is list types. Authentication, because I didn't paste. Why didn't I paste? Session name, operation, list types, and it doesn't let me in. Okay, let's try here. Query. Okay, this is a query. This is nice. Let's put this one here. Okay, this is the same query we were doing before. As you can see here, I'm doing this. This one over here. Select account, account's name, revenue from accounts limit 4. This is the web service operation. This is what the because obviously that the coreBOS web service tool kind of isolates you from the real calls that are going on in the background and the JSON format that's coming back. But in the end, it's just the web service endpoint, just an HTTP call. So the queries look like this. Just going back a step, the operation query. the query you want to send in, which in this case is this select account name, annual revenue from accounts, and the session name, which is basically this one. This one should work also on the browser, but anyway, as you can see, using that one here, I get this JSON format back, where it tells me basically the account, the columns that I need and the ID, which is what the web service development tool was actually giving to me, kind of nice format in that table. Oh, I don't know why this one's not working. This one should work. Person query, select, account name, session name. Why isn't that one working? Okay, so it's not working. It doesn't want to work. We're not going to force it. Okay, this one. Let's change this one here. Let's rename this one to list types. And we do that. List types here. List types. And we don't need this one. And we save. And we save. And authentication required. Okay, nice. Why is that? Maybe because this one killed it. This one killed it. Where are you? Load. Context values. Context values. This one. Okay. Okay, then let's get back here. Let's do this one. Do this login again, and that is giving me the exact same number. Okay, wonderful. What am I doing wrong here? And this one is working. This one is working. Okay, whatever. List types. As you can see here, the list types gives me, I'm the admin user, so it actually gives me a lot of information. I have access to all the modules in this case. It gives me that list of all the modules that I have access to. So the first thing that you have to do when you log in on the web service is make sure that your application, whatever your application is not going to break because you access a module that the user that logged in doesn't have access to. I mean, that is a typical case where you start programming in React and you say, okay, when the user logs in, we go to the account module. And all of a sudden, some user comes that doesn't have access to the account module and the whole application breaks because actually you can't access the account module. So you absolutely have to check a list types every time the user logs in and make sure that you have a clear idea of what modules your user can access. The same happens in the next step. Okay, sure, I have access to the campaign module, but that doesn't mean that I have access to all the fields that are on the campaign module, or more so, I can connect to a coreBOS that has a different set of fields because somebody went in that coreBOS and deleted some of the default fields and added 5 new fields. So I cannot set any kind of conditions on that coreBOS unless my application is really specific. I mean, if you are programming for a very specific client and you're making a specific portal for that client, then you can obviously count that on that coreBOS that you are connecting to, you are going to have those fields because you're making a very specific kind of vertical. But if you're trying to make a generic application that should work with any coreBOS, you have to be playing with this meta information all the time. Okay, so the next step is not this list types, but can I rename this one? List types. Enter name. Yeah, but I didn't say. Okay, yes. And let's duplicate this one again. And wait a minute. Let's try this just because. No. Okay, it's curious. Okay, let's make this one. Let's rename this one, and we're going to put this one as a describe. And we'll save this one, and I'm going to change the operation to describe. As you can see, the format of the query language is all about this operation parameter. That operation is the one that defines what we are trying to do with coreBOS, and then hopefully I'll get the parameter right, which is this one. And let's do campaigns, just because. Authentication required. Okay, not a problem. Log in again, and we do this describe. Okay. Permission to perform the operation is not defined. Either I have broken something in my coreBOS or something is wrong somewhere. We could try online. Let me see, did I get this right? Permission to perform counts. Yeah, I got that right, but for some reason it's not working. And that's probably here too. Okay. Let's do the describe here. Let's get that one working. And where's the describe? Describe here. Because this one logged out. Okay. I got it. Okay, because they're playing with the session. Both of them are playing with the session, obviously. That won't work, so why didn't this one work? Don't get it. Okay, I think I understand what's going on, because I don't usually play around with the flipping from one client to another. And we rewrote the session management a few weeks ago, and that is actually not permitted. No, each session should have its each access should have its own session, but they must be overriding each other because I'm playing with them. I'm actually moving the same session code around. We could do that before, but we can't do that anymore, and that must be why I'm getting into that troubles. Anyway, the describe gives me. I would really like to see that describe. Can we do that with this one? No. This one probably died also, right? No. Okay, the describe, we'll play with it this way. The describe basically gives me, given a module, it will give you all of the meta information of that module. So you have the ID of that module. As you can see here, when we were doing the query language, when we were doing the queries, it always gives me that account name from accounts. It gives me this ID here, which is 11x74. This is the ID that I can use to get all of the information from that account. So I can actually do something like this. Give me all of the information from that where the ID equals 1174. That 11 identifies the module. As you can see here, now I have all of the fields of the account module. Even the custom fields are all here. So this is the way that coreBOS identifies records in coreBOS. Okay, it asks you for this module identifier, separates that with an X, and then gives you the internal ID of that module. Okay, of that record. Sorry. All of the records have their own number. All of the modules have their own prefix, and so this is the way that you basically see that. The describe, the first thing that it tells you is what is that identifier for that module. So if I scroll down and we get another module, okay, these are all of the fields. If I go to assets, assets has another number. It has this 29x here. Okay. Besides giving me that number, it tells me if the user that is logged in right now can create records, can update, can delete, or can retrieve. Okay, that all depends on the user logging in. And again, this is the same thing I was talking about before. If your application shows the user a create field and tries to create, but the user doesn't have create permissions, it's going to fail. Your application is going to fail. So the first thing your application, external application, has to do is get this meta information and see if the user can create or not. And if they can, then don't let them create on your front-end application. Okay. Then it gives you all of the other information of that module. Basically the list fields, the fields that you want to show when you show a list of this module. The other modules that are available and related to this one, and then each field. For each field, we get the name of the field, the internal name of the field, the label of the field, if it's mandatory or not, if it's editable or not, the sequence, because the fields are ordered, so you get the order from the back end. You don't get the order from your front end unless you want to, because again, this is just meta information that you can use or not, depends on what you want to do. An internal ID, of the block, sequence of the blocks, because the fields are grouped up in blocks, the label of the block, and the type. The type is really important because that is where coreBOS is telling you this field is a date field, or a number field, or a pick list, or a relation field, a foreign key, and it gives you more information. For example, here, this is the member of field, the one that I was telling you about a moment ago, where I was saying that an account actually has a higher level account, parent account. That field is a UE type 10 field, which is a reference field, a foreign key field, and in this case you can only select accounts on that field. Okay, so it's a foreign key, but you can only accept accounts, because on a foreign key you can actually access a point to more than one record. One module, sorry. Here we have a pick list. So not only does it give me the fact that it's a pick list, but it gives me all of the values that are in that pick list. All of the values that this user has access to, because each value in a pick list is role based. So depending on the user, I will have more or less rows in this pick list. So again, we have to take that into consideration. Just can't count on them being there. And we have a whole bunch of other different types of UE types. This is a reference field to other users. This is a checkbox. This is a number. No, this is date time. And okay, that depends on, that's documented in the wiki. And we have a whole bunch of things here. But as you can see, we have information for each individual field. And then it starts with another module. So this is basically a describe on another module, and you have different relations, different numbers, different related modules, different fields. But in the end, it's all kind of the same. Let's look for potentials, because potentials has opportunities, has the case. Where is this one? Opportunities, no? Potentials, okay. Potentials has this field. Just to remark a little bit what I was just saying. This reference field, this UE type 10 on potentials actually can be pointing to an account or to a contact. So it actually tells you that this UE type can be one of two things. You can have a potential record managing on an account, on a company, or you can have a potential record with a person that you're trying to sell something to. So this field is overloaded. It's actually pointing to two different things. And the meta information that you get from the backend will give you that information. Okay? So playing with that relation and that, we're going to go back to the queries, but after seeing quickly this, I'm not going to actually get into these. Here we have a whole bunch. Really, there's a lot of documentation online about all the other meta information that you can get from coreBOS. We have information about filters, users, relations, the get reference value, which we will see next kind of quickly. But all of that information is kind of available there. It's kind of documented, not hard to find, and you can ask anyway. It's not hard. But I want to comment one thing first before we go on. If I do a query on the project tasks module, project tasks module, okay, let's put the where here. No, let's get rid of the where, and let's do this one, project task. Okay, so on this project task, I have the project task name, and here I have a project task ID, a project ID. Each project task belongs to a project, obviously, okay? So here I have this project ID, which is 33. So if we go to the describe and we actually look for the projects, we'll see that the ID of the project is 33. And the ID is the internal ID. So I can actually search. I don't know if we can order by that one. No? Order by, does that work? Order by project, no, project ID, correct. What does that do? Yeah, okay, not bad. Okay, 335989, 355989, and 990, 990. Okay, not bad. Okay, so if I want to actually find the records that are related to this one, I can do this and change this, and I get those four. Okay, very nice. Now, this is where the dialects, those 4 dialects that I was talking about, come into play. Okay, and it's really kind of edge case and not really nice. And most people get stuck up on this, which makes total sense actually. But if I say here, and project task name like H. Okay, I get these two which have an H in it, and that seems to be working pretty correctly. But if I put a parenthesis here, what happens? I get no results found, which is a terrible user experience. Because actually, oh wait, did I do that wrong? Let's see. Yeah, okay. The explanation is the same, even if I did have the wrong syntax. Actually, I can get rid of this. The query language must have that, but the query development tool actually adds that for me if I don't have it. So anyway, so what happened here? Why is this breaking? Why is this not working at all? The explanation, sad explanation, is that when you put those parentheses there, you are moving from the basic query language to the query generator language. Because the basic language, the basic query language that we had at the beginning does not support parentheses. And obviously parentheses are totally necessary. I mean, in this case, this is a bad example for parentheses because actually you don't need them in this one, but sometimes you do. I mean, if I add another condition here, where we add this one again, or I don't know, not like H, still doesn't work. Project ID, this, okay, wait, missing the parenthesis at the end, I have to balance those. Okay, it's still failing. Yeah, totally. Okay, great. In this case, it totally makes sense because I have that OR there, which probably would break with the AND if I don't put the parentheses. So this is totally necessary to have those parentheses there. Well, the first languages, the first variants, and the first dialects of the query language did not support parentheses. So we were very limited. We couldn't do a lot of things. So we had to introduce those parentheses somehow, and we did that using the query language. The query language was basically created for the query language, the query generator dialect. That was created basically for the list view inside the application. Okay, so that I could search. If I go to project tasks and I search here for what? We didn't get the name. Let's go to the project. Sales support projects. And we click on this one, and we click on this one. I'm looking for 59. This 5990 is the ID of the record in coreBOS, so I can actually come here, change this number here, and we're actually playing with this record here. So the name that I'm looking for is man-o. If we go to the project task, we will see those 4 project tasks that I'm playing with. I mean, in the web service API, in the end, we're just accessing the information that's inside coreBOS. So if I want to search in coreBOS for that project, I do this. I mean, this makes total sense. I'm inside coreBOS. I'm a user. I'm on the list view of a project task. I want to get the list of project tasks that belong to this project. You are supposed to give me the name of the project. You're not supposed to give me here that 590. I mean, that makes no sense. Nobody is going to work with the IDs. They want to work with the names. So if I search on that, I get the 4 that I want. Okay, that is query generator. Inside internally, that we are working with the query generator class. That class expects me to give the letters, the name, not the IDs. So that works really nice here, but here it doesn't. Here it actually kind of doesn't make sense at all, because the project ID is supposed to be not a string, but actually a ID, because we are kind of in a SQL lower level language. So it's a conflict of interest. I mean, we had to kind of balance that fact that we already have a really powerful class, which is the query generator, which we use everywhere inside coreBOS, and we have unit tests, and we know that it's working correctly, and it's a power horse inside coreBOS that actually, pushes forward even the workflow system. So either we had to modify that whole engine just to support these IDs, or we kind of played with that fact that you can send me in the string or the name, not just the ID. Okay. On the other side, what I usually recommend when people run into this problem, which I totally understand and I agree with, I mean, I understand totally, but what I try to recommend is that you don't use the reference field. When you have to access, when you want to search or limit or condition on ID, a foreign key, you should use the project, the module name, project.id. So you go to the project, and on the project you use the ID. And in this case, we are using that ID. So here we are using that 33590. I hope I got that right. And here we do the same. And that should give me the same result that we had using the internal name of the project. Yeah, okay, the query changed, but the result is the same. So in general, the idea is that for some reason of historical past and backward compatibilities and my craziness, my personal craziness as a project manager of this thing, I decided that we needed a stronger, more powerful query language, that I wanted to base that on the query generator because it already did 100% of what I actually needed. And the price we paid is that we can't search on reference fields directly with the ID. We have to use the ID field on the module itself, or use the string and the name. Okay, so if you get caught up in that, you probably won't remember what I'm saying now because it's something that happens every time now and then. But at least you know that it's a thing. And if you don't remember exactly the details, you can search for them on the wiki, or you can ask me or anybody else, and we will undig that and remember how it works and what that's for. Okay, just keep in mind that we have 4 dialects there, and depending on what you do with subtle differences, you are jumping from one dialect to another, and you can get caught. Okay, next step, CRUD operations. We have, just like we have query, which gives us information about what data we have in that coreBOS. We have endpoints to be able to manipulate that information. So we can create records, we can retrieve records, we can update or revise. Basically, they're the same. Both endpoints are the same. We can delete records. Obviously, all of these operations are limited to the permissions that the user is connecting as. Okay, if the user connecting cannot delete, then the application will not let you delete, even if you do send in the delete operation. We can do the same with users and documents. Both are a little special. Not much, really. I mean, users basically works the same. The only difference actually with the users is that if you try to delete a user, you have to give me another user, because I'm going to transfer all the records from one user to the other, which does not happen with any other module. I mean, any other module, you delete a record, then you just delete the record. I mean, not a big thing. Documents are also a little special because they have attachments. You are actually sending a file in with the document, so we have to have a little special syntax there to get to permit you to send me the document in. But nothing really special. It's all documented on the wiki, and not really just to know that we have that kind of difference there. Then we have mass operations. Mass operations are really nice and powerful ways of getting things done. You can do a mass delete and delete a whole bunch of records at the same time, or a mass retrieve. So if you're trying to generate a list view, you can actually ask coreBOS, okay, give me these 20 records all at once, so I don't have to do 20 web service calls, which always take time because the network is always slow with respect to all of the other operations that we're doing here. Mass create, also very, very powerful, where you can actually send in a whole bunch of records. That was really a nice piece of work that Timothy did. Really, really nice. Basically, you send in a whole JSON object with a whole bunch of different records and the relation between them, and it automatically calculates the relations, the order in which the records should be created, and it inserts them all into the database at the same time. Really, really powerful. Again, saving time on the network call, but also on the relational side, because I mean, if you had to create all of those records yourself manually with individual calls, you have to first get the right order. You have to make the call for the first one, get the ID that coreBOS gave you, create the record, the JSON object for the next record, and insert the ID you got from the first call, and then make the next network call, and etc. So it really gets complicated and slow. So this web service endpoint really, really powerful. You just send everything in, and coreBOS will do all the work for you. And then we have a few more there, which is to create an update with validations. By default, the coreBOS endpoints do not do validations, mostly because when this was born, we didn't have validations in coreBOS at that point. Really a very, very basic set of validations. Then we introduced the validation maps and a whole bunch of other things that we have there. So we added new endpoints to do the validations, so you have to choose whether you want them or not. We have an upsert, which is always nice. Yeah, search for it. If it's there, update it. If it's not there, create it. So you don't have to, again, saving network calls. Most of those all appeared later as we started using it. Then we have some special calls for establishing relations, because they add the many-to-many relations. Obviously, you can say this record and this record are related together, or unrelate them for. Okay, let's have a really quick look at what that would look like. This is what a create would look like. This is a really low-level thing, and again, I'm going way over time. I love to talk. So last name assigned. This is basically what a contact looks like. I'm sending in the fields I want to give values to, and I basically tell the endpoint, which would be this one, the call. This is the call that I'm actually making. The session name, which validates me as a authorized user to be able to do those calls. The operation is a create. The element is the object that I'm sending in, this one, the set of fields I want to create with their values. So obviously I need to get these names right, which are obviously coming from here. Okay, so again, this meta information is absolutely important. That first name, what fields am I sending in? Last name, assigned to, and home phone. That means that it's this last name, this home phone, and the assigned user, which is probably down here somewhere, this one. So of all of the fields that I have here on the contact, which you see are many, this particular create that we're looking at is only setting 3, and it sends those 3 in on this element property of the web service create call. It also tells me what module it wants to create. This is what I was telling you at the start, where I said that we need that level of abstraction, because I don't know what modules are going to be in that coreBOS. I have no idea. I don't even know what fields those modules are going to have. So what I have to do is get that meta information, and when I send the create, I have to tell coreBOS, okay, create a record on this module with this information. Okay, so it actually needs both of that information. We're always kind of sending the module around some way or another. Even on the queries that we were doing before, when I do that from, I do that select account name from accounts, that accounts is the module, because actually coreBOS needs to understand what module are you asking for. That's kind of a constant everywhere. You're going to find that almost everywhere. That's what a create looks like. An update looks very similar. The only difference is that you give me the ID instead of the module name, and with the ID I actually get the record I need to update, and the delete. All of these commands look very similar. All of them look very similar, and they're very well documented, and we have a lot of examples on them. Then we have a bunch of other stuff which I'm not going to get into, but I want just to say that we have them. On the web service, we can use the workflow system that's inside coreBOS. So you can trigger workflows from the web service. You can directly call web workflows from the web service API directly. Just like say, execute this workflow on these records, and coreBOS goes and triggers those workflows for you. We can even define in coreBOS workflows that are manual. which will never be triggered by coreBOS itself. The only way to trigger them is using the web service endpoint. So that's kind of powerful. Also, if you want to send an email, usually you would trigger an email probably with the save in the application, but if you want to, you can actually send that with a web service call directly. We have business questions. We have a whole API on you can call the business actions, the business questions, the business actions, the rules, the decision tables. Very powerful. That means that somebody can actually create a whole decision table in coreBOS, and you as the web service API consumer that you're developing the front end or the end external application, when a user needs to make a decision, he can give you the parameters. You call the coreBOS web service engine, the decision table engine, the rule engine, and coreBOS will tell you the result. So you don't even have to know where that result is coming from. Whoever is in charge of configuring the rules and the conditions for that decision are being made in coreBOS. You just, as the web service API consumer, you just call, you get the result back, and you show it to your client. We can do global searches. We can generate PDFs just like we do inside the application. We have an autocomplete endpoint where you can, typical where you start writing, typing, and you kind of show the results. We have an endpoint that helps you do that quickly. You can do that with queries. Obviously, in the end, the autocomplete is just that query. But anyway, the autocomplete has a little bit more functionality. We can convert leads. We have portal user logins. That's really nice also. That's basically for those portals and endpoints where you don't want users logging into coreBOS, but actually employees or contacts. If you have a contact or a vendor portal, you don't want to give your vendor a user that can access coreBOS. You want to give them just access to the vendor portal. So we have a specific way of permitting that operation. So you can have, I don't know, hundreds of or thousands of contacts in your coreBOS, and you give those contacts access to a portal where they can work or they can interact with your company, but you're not giving them real user access. Okay, it's a different type of access to the web service API. That's kind of powerful. Extended session, very powerful also. Basically, that is the idea is that you have somebody has already logged into coreBOS, so they did the normal login, coreBOS login on the UI, and you're already logged in, but you want to connect to the web service API. So you kind of recycle the session name that they already have. So you kind of extend, you just kind of set it to the web service. Okay, I'm already logged in, so I don't want to log in again. Use the same session that these people already have. We can do global variables. Obviously, global variables are really important inside and outside the application. We have a translation engine in coreBOS, which is very powerful, does a whole bunch of magic. We can do that from the web service API also. You can do JavaScript logging. I don't know how useful that is, but you can actually send to the coreBOS logging engine messages from JavaScript from outside. And you can do the sync. Sync is nice where you are syncing information. Basically, you have an application that connects to coreBOS, gets all of the information, brings it up to date, and then a couple days later, you connect again, and you call the sync endpoint, and you basically are asking coreBOS, give me a list of all of the changes that have happened since the last time I was here. And it will give you all of the records that have changed, and which ones have been deleted, and what has changed, and everything. So you can kind of keep a mobile app with information in sync without being constantly connected to your coreBOS. That's not really much of a thing anymore. But 10 years ago, where everybody was complaining that they didn't have connectivity, it was kind of useful. Now, everybody's connected all the time, so not really that much of a point anything anymore. Okay, we're almost done, I think. Yeah, almost done. To make all of this a little easier, we have created a set of libraries that will abstract all of the hard parts for you. We have these libraries for a whole bunch of languages. You can download them here. We have support for ActionScript, which doesn't exist anymore, AngularJS, which probably basically doesn't exist anymore either, for Google, for Integromat, Make now, we should change this, or put some slash there or something, for Laravel, for Qt, for the KDE UI widget library or whatever, for Polymer, web components, for C#, for Go, for Java, for JavaScript, for Perl, for PHP, for Python, and for Svelte. Okay, so if you want to program in any of these languages, I mean, you can download this library and it will make it a lot easier for you. Okay, I'm going to show you an example of that with JavaScript. Okay, we have the library in coreBOS, so I'm going to load that library and I'm going to access the coreBOS web service API through JavaScript using the library. Okay, we're going to do a query and we're going to test that. Okay, so I'm going to come over here to my coreBOS and I'm going to go over here to the business actions and I'm going to add a new action, which is a JavaScript header script, this one, and we're going to put here web service client, and here I'm going to load the library. Okay, coreBOS has this library already included. It's in include web service client. Yes. We have two. We have a promise-based one and a normal callback JavaScript one. I'm going to use the promise-based one. Okay, so basically this is how you would work in JavaScript. If you actually want to work, if you want to create an external application using JavaScript, you would load this library. Okay, you come over here to the repository, you go into the JavaScript library because you're programming in JavaScript, and you get this web service client P promise-based JavaScript library, and you start using it. We have an npm version, so if you are on npm, you can do the typical npm install and it will install it for you. But anyway, the thing is that you have to load this library into your code, and that's what I'm doing here. Basically with this action, I'm telling coreBOS that I want it to load this library every time that coreBOS loads a page, which just happened, which means that if I come over here to the inspector and I look for that code, I have it here. Okay, that action that I just created actually loaded this script, so I can use it. So let's see what that looks like. Let's create a new variable, which is this one. Basically, this is the library. That's the object that I just loaded with that web service client library. I give it the URL I want to connect to, and coreBOS now knows that I'm connected there. I can do an extend session. Yeah, that's the function. And since this is all promise-based, that's what this looks like. So notice that I am logged into this coreBOS. I could do a do login. I could log in again, following the two-step process that we discussed at the beginning. But I am already logged in. I already have a session. So basically with this extend session, what I'm trying to say is, okay, go and ask this coreBOS down here what session it's using and reuse that same session to log in to the web service app. That's what the extend session does. When this extend session, this is promise-based, so basically when this finishes, it's going to send me the data as the result, and I'm going to put that on screen, and I get this session name here. Okay, basically this is the session name that I'm using in this coreBOS down here, and I recycled it to get into the coreBOS web service API. So that means that now that object, this CBWS, knows how to connect to the web service API, and I can do again that same account name from accounts, and we limit that again so we don't get too many, and we close this. Oh yeah, okay, obviously this is promise based, so I have to get the result back and show it on screen. Okay. And here I have my 5 records. So the idea is that if you look at that library call, that library made my life really easy. I mean, I don't have to really know about anything. I just use the do query, and I give it the query, and I don't even have to know, I mean, the session. I don't have to worry about the format of the URL, how it's going to get information back, all of the details. I mean, totally. The do query, the web service library is giving me an abstraction layer on top of everything I explained today. It makes it really easy. I can just do that query. Or for example, we could do, let's try the describe here. The describe that didn't work the other place. If I do a do describe, and here we put accounts, just because I have it, and here it is. This is the result of that describe. As you can see, very similar to the output that we were seeing in the web service development tool. It tells me if I can create, if I can delete, if I can update, if I can retrieve the labels of the field, the prefix of the field, and I have an array here with all of the fields, and for each field all of the information that we were seeing in the web service development tool. So it's not about the web service development tool. I mean, the API is accessible from any language and from any endpoint. I mean, it's just HTTP and things. So, I mean, once you validate it, you can get the information from anywhere. And the library is going to make it kind of really easy, because this, as you can see, this call here is simple. I mean, you just do describe. You don't even have to worry about what information or what format the query has to have. The call has to have. Again, we have a whole bunch of different endpoints here that kind of make it easy. The do invoke is a generic one that makes you be able to call any endpoint. And curious enough, I went to an hour and a half. Not bad. I was expecting 40 minutes. So this is the reference. This Tiddler, as again, following up with the TiddlyWiki, that presentation I did. As you notice, I did this again on the TiddlyWiki with the presentation plugin. Here we have those references, so you can actually access them. Most of you have access here. If you don't, you can look for me and ask for me. And I mean, basically it's what I talked about. The documentation is on the web service, in the API, in the wiki, sorry. Everything I explained is here, more or less, in more or less details. I mean, if you look at the documentation, we have everything here, and the last one here, we have this Open API also. Charity helped with this one. So for those of you who are familiar with this output, because many APIs are out there like this, you can actually look at these things also in the Open API format. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm around if you need anything. If you have any questions, we're here to help with the web service API. Anything you need for any questions you have, just reach out and I'll be happy to answer. Thanks for holding on. Bye.